really appreciate everyone joining us on this lunch and learn that we've got here. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our first speaker to you, Jackie Lauer. Jackie has been running a boutique consulting and coaching business for 24 years, specializing in transforming leaders and workplace cultures through the science of positive psychology and neuroscience. I would be able to speak for quite a while about her skills, her experience, and her impact on so many people. But our time is so brief, so I'm just going to leave it here for you to experience a little bit about Jackie's work for yourself. So thank you so much, Jackie, for being here.
Thank you, Dale. Thanks for having me. And oh my goodness, I'm having fun watching all the names coming in and all the people that I know and some people I haven't seen forever. So it's an honor to be here. This is a topic that all of us can relate to. Some of it you've probably been trained in before. It's a little bit of a fire hose, Jackie hour, or 30 to 25 minutes fire hose. I'm going to talk fast because you're smart, you're all capable, you all do this anyway. Let's be real. So I hope what I'm doing is giving you maybe one takeaway or inspiring you to invite some of your people to detailed, more in-depth training. That's my hidden agenda. How's that for being really clear? All right, let's dig in, Alini. So let's just take a moment while you're chomping on your lunchtime and hanging out with us. I want you just kind of look back over the last couple of weeks. And is there a difficult conversation that you've been avoiding? So in the spirit of playfulness, can you put your yes or no in the chat so we can see that we're not alone? Looking over the past couple of weeks, is there a conversation that you've been avoiding?
I'm seeing a bunch of there's a bunch of yeses here, Jackie. 100% yes. I don't think I've seen a no yet.
I see you. Oh, a couple no's right on. That's so good. It's my way at one, being playful, two, just normalizing. I always joke and say I might be an expert in emotional intelligence, but I ain't no master. Like it's always a journey depending on the context or the people we're with. So thank you for being playful with me. All right, Alini. So let's talk about the different kinds, the types of difficult conversations that we're often faced with in our roles as professionals, as leaders. It's something that is a difficult conversation is really the one that we often avoid is because it's sensitive. It's sensitive information, or we know it could trigger the other person, or more than anything, trigger ourselves. We often don't want to be uncomfortable. So we avoid. It's not rocket science. I often joke, for those of you who know me, I'm a pretty chubby girl. So I always joke and say I have a six-pack up here, not down here. The six-pack is the muscle working out the brain so that we get more and more comfortable with these courageous and difficult conversations. And the more you practice it, the more comfortable it becomes for you. I often will joke with my mom. She was my person I had to learn how to do this with. Of all the people in my life, it was my mom. And there were little sounds or noises or facial expressions that would just set me off with her. But I've noticed over the years, none of that happens anymore. I literally sit in curiosity or amusement if there's something that's behaving that used to be an old trigger for me. So it's just my way of letting you know, the more we practice it, the more our brain gets really strong, like a muscle. The difficult conversations that we are often involving topics that we don't want to talk about. It's situations, when we're not really sure what to say. We know there's going to be conflicting opinions, or we assume there's going to be conflicting opinions, where the circumstances are uncertain, because we know from a neuroscience perspective, when there's a certainty, a lack of certainty or ambiguity, that's when we'll feel uncomfortable. Stress hormones get released. And discussions when you feel uncomfortable, right? It's just whether it's a topic or a person that we've got a pattern with, it makes it difficult. Right. So what's the alternative though? I mean, it's funny. I just had a call with a fellow coach in Toronto. We were meeting for the first time this morning. And I said, why me? Like, why are you talking to me? What's this about me? He just said, I was in a meeting with you and I love that you wouldn't let us shove things under the carpet. But you made it approachable. And I said, isn't that our job as leaders? We want to be practiced so much so that these hard conversations are worthy. And the alternative is when we avoid them, right? We lots of leaders do. We shove shit under the carpet because it's uncomfortable. But I just don't want people to do that because it makes things worse. Now, I'm stating the obvious. So let's go to the next slide. So as a manager, right, it's likely we're going to have difficult conversations. Let's be real. All of you do. Think about just your day so far. It's right. It's 12:06. How many conversations were already uncomfortable? Probably 80% of you can teach this course. It is normal to feel uncomfortable. For example, we're going to talk about poor employee performance, and we have to talk about it. Or there's complaints and grievances from someone inside or outside the org, right? We have to give bad news. Maybe there's layoff or termination that's happening, or someone has resigned and it's going to hit us hard, make work challenging. Or there's conflict that exists between a number of members on our team or with you, right? And then communicating some of the challenging decisions. So, and again, the spirit of sharing with each other, just pop in the chat, right? What are some other things, great examples of difficult conversations in the workplace? A couple examples. And scan your day, scan your week. Yeah, employee conflicts for sure. Change management, that's a good one, Sybil. Managing through change. And sometimes we don't always realize, like we might be okay with the change, but others aren't. So checking in and seeing how it's going. Broken trust, awesome. Personal hygiene, Karen, really good one. That takes me back in my early years for sure. Yeah, after terminations, those difficult conversations with those who remain, and the impact maybe lost trust when those things happen. Really good. Thank you, gang. All right, Alini. So the question becomes, so why? Like, why? I had one client, I've been coaching him for a year now, and one of the things that Bill says, like, why bother? Like, doesn't get fixed anyway. I'm like, well, you can't control the whole system, the whole organization, but at least you can control this moment with this employee, right? He was just feeling like there's no benefit. So let's talk about what are the benefits. It is difficult conversations. Goodness gracious. You know, I was just thinking about, I was negotiating for a new house, and then I was negotiating with my sister on a mortgage. My 18-year-old, you know, is challenging all the time. There's difficult conversations in our day, every day. It is absolutely a part of our work life too, right? It's an opportunity to build trust. It's an opportunity to resolve those conflicts instead of letting them just sit there and fester. There's something awesome about working inside a team or an org that is practiced at difficult conversations. So they've got awesome trust, they've got great relationships. But I love it because I work a lot in the tech space, and a lot of the tech entrepreneurs and organizations is like, we're in tech, we're innovative. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this. It's like, like you might have an innovative product and a new idea that's entering the market. But if over time you're not practiced at handling difficult conversations, you're going to shut your people down. Your new ideas are not going to come, and the innovation will disappear, right? So lots of benefits. Many of us avoid it, but it's worthwhile when we dig in. All right, next slide. So what are those typical avoidance responses that we all have? I can name a couple of myself. I can see myself in a couple of these. Even those of us who are seasoned and experienced, we will often avoid something. So what you'll hear are things like, I don't want to hurt his feelings. You know, she's having a tough time right now, so I don't want to hurt her feelings, right? Everybody makes mistakes. It's like, yes, they do. And you're making one too by avoiding it. Now's just not a good time. And as my client Bill says, what's the point? It's never a good outcome. I don't have time. I don't have time. It's like, don't you? Like, aren't we going to make this worse? You're going to get sucked into a deeper problem. And the other one we often hear is the problem will fix itself. Problem will fix itself. So the reason I share those out loud are just to make sure that we're listening for those in ourselves or in others that we're working with inside our orgs. Anyone I've missed? Sorry, Lainey. Anyone I've missed? Hurt feelings can be an excuse when it's really, I don't want to face this. So true, Dave. Yep. Very, very true. Any other excuses, or excuses is too strong, but avoidant. Sometimes we're not consciously avoiding, right? All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so put your answers in the chat, please. Feeling intimidated? Thank you, Tanya. That's an awesome one. What is the impact on organizations and its people when the cultural norm is to avoid difficult conversations? And I know a lot of you are going to relate to this. I know because of what you do. It's like, I love the leaders that bring me in. It's like, could you just help us coach that person and, help them have a difficult conversation? It's like, why didn't I start with you? Like, why don't we start with the leader? So what's the impact? Frustration, lost trust, lack of clarity, fractured workplaces, right? Team members not feeling equitable. There's a lack of communication, mistrust. Gossip often starts. So true. Yeah, look at this, you guys. Low morale, toxic workplace. And like, it's funny, the gentleman I was talking to earlier today that I said is in Toronto, is my first meeting with him. He just said, "Who do you work with?" I said, "The leaders." And he said, at the bottom, no, if I'm going to come into an organization, we want to make sure that the leaders at the top are comfortable with handling difficult conversations too, right? Because it'll cascade. It will cascade down. When there's avoidant leaders, eventually that becomes the cultural norm. And look at this list. Look at the impact, right? All right, moving on. So you've already answered this question. This was my backup slide, just in case you were so busy eating your lunch, I didn't get engagement, but I'm stupid and I should have understood that you guys are awesome, right? You've already covered it all, right? Higher absentee, low morale, reduction in productivity, low trust, etc. So thank you. Hi, Jennifer. Farron, I see you. I keep reading all your names and getting excited about who I'm seeing. All right, Eleni. So in understanding how our personalities impact the conversation process, there's a little like an online training with H2R that people could just do it in their own time that covers difficult conversations. And we go into a bit of depth, for instance, around the personality piece. So this is just a quick high level. So what is personality becomes the first question, right? It's any person's collection of our interrelated behavior, cognitive, and emotional patterns. I love this, that comprise our unique adjustment to life, right? Behavioral, cognitive, emotional. So when I'm coaching, whether it's an individual or team, I'm listening for those things, or I'm observing their behavior patterns, their thinking patterns, or their emotional patterns, because it helps me understand who they are, understand their belief systems, or understand their values, right? They rarely change over time, but sometimes they do. Like when we get really great transformative moments in our life, they change our belief systems and sometimes change our personality. So personality is context. All right. And we know that there's tons of personality models. It's just 3 of hundreds and hundreds of models, thousands really. So the big 5 that often companies like Deloitte and Accenture would use. In the middle, you've got the Myers-Briggs thing. I even remember my kid at 10 years old. He's like, "What are you, Mom?" Like, I'm an INFP. I'm like, oh my God, they're doing Myers-Briggs in grade 5. What is happening here? But it's context. And then you've got the personality type models from Mind Journal. I was thinking about even discs. They're varying versions. My sister uses a phrase that I steal a lot, which is all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And what she means by that is, if we can use a model like the Big 5 or Myers-Briggs or DISC, for instance, we get language to understand each other better, right? We get context that helps us to lean in. So moving to the next slide. How does understanding personality help? Why does this even matter? Well, we can tailor our communications, right? If we know that that someone is a D on the disc versus an influencer, then we slightly adjust our model. If we know that someone, I do this a lot because clearly I'm an extrovert, but I coach a ton of introverts. So my model is, Jackie, shut up, way more often, give them lots of thinking space and don't fill their space while they're thinking. So we adjust. That's an obvious one. That's where we tailor our style, our comms. It also helps us to build trust. So when you're standing in a place of leading, or a colleague, or frankly, even a parent, when you're showing that you understand their values and their traits, you're going to create a space that's safe for them to show up. I had one client yesterday, Tim. He's new to the org. I've been coaching his boss for 3 years. And Tim is brand new to me, and he says, Jackie, I love this place. It's the best place I've ever worked. I thought, is he in the honeymoon phase? Like, where is he? I said, tell me why. And he said, honestly, I have never been allowed or felt safe enough to show up fully myself. And it's because we've been working with that leadership team for 2 to 3 years to help understand the importance of knowing personality or knowing values or knowing strengths. So we build trust when we demonstrate that understanding. We manage conflict better because we're responding. We have different styles of responding. So there's one model I use called Strength Deployment Inventory, SDI, and it looks at our motivations during conflict. When I'm in conflict at level 1, I'm still collaborative and affiliative and probably playful. When you get to level 2, for me, I'm still collaborating, but I'm not as playful. It's getting serious. And when I'm full on level 3 in conflict with you, I become very calm, very logical. There's no emotion. So those that know me well, when playfulness is gone and I sound logical, it's like, shit, she's mad. And what I love about teaching leadership teams is understanding those styles. Not one is better than the other. They're just different, right? And so if you're going to model respect for their style in the middle of that conflict, that's pretty powerful stuff. Promotes empathy because you're standing in a place of understanding or respect. You're showing that you value them. You're trying to create a safe place for them. And of course, you're fostering collaboration, right? Modeling the different perspectives and different traits are okay. It's on all of us to learn how to respect them and move forward together. Find that alignment. All right. So I have 7 minutes left. I gotta squeeze the life out of that. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing that. I love that you're using SDI. In this firehouse, these are a couple of quick tips. Again, this is me attempting to summarize, hours and hours of training to give you some quick little tips, many of which I'm sure you use. So feel free to share some as well. All right, let's dig in. Just a couple of them for you. So number 1, overrule avoidance. And I mean that be intentional in the overrule. Normalize leaning into courageous conversations. And then celebrate when you do. So I've got the one client group I was just referring to, I've been working with them 3 and 4 years. And what I love is for instance, their chief sales officer, he's called the chief revenue officer, and then their CEO, when they hold their team meetings with their leadership table, they both start with, so who leaned in? And everyone knows what they mean. That means, did you lean into a difficult conversation? And then they want the context. And the whole team will pound their fists on the table and do this little celebration noise. So what they've done is they've normalized leaning into courageous conversation. How cool is that? And what I love is new guys like Tim that just joined the org has no idea where any of that came from. He just like, God, that's cool. And he goes, and we're allowed to fail? Like, what a concept, right? Demonstrate the wins when people choose to have the difficult conversation, and celebrate that they even leaned in to try, even if it didn't work the first time. All right. You guys, if any of you have been through therapy, you probably know this one. So use you, like I statements versus you statements are powerful. So when you say things like you aren't collaborating with the rest of the team, you've managed to make them all dislike you. Okay. It's a little, we call it the hard start. When you come at someone with this aggressive language, you back them automatically into the corner. What I want people to learn to do is invite them into a new space. So I have received feedback that projects aren't going and getting the kind of attention, everyone's full attention the way that I like. Let's talk about how we could change that. So I statements, because it's your truth. I'm noticing that these things are happening. So by doing that, you're saying, I'm inviting you into a new space with me so we can talk about what's possible here. And it's possible. I want to hear your view. I have a view. Maybe there's other perspectives we bring in. So just really notice how often someone is saying you versus I, or how often you are. All right, next one. So just this, to me, it's like one piece of homework if you choose to take it on. Just notice how often people say you, right? And there are things in neuroscience that we talk about that is what we call behavior that is a threat. right? So what behavior do you model that threatens someone? When you say you always, or you have to, like the ordering and directing, you have to do. Now, automatically the brain goes, "Mm, you're directing me instead of inviting me in." It shuts people down. A warning or threat, you'd better, right? When you get preachy and moralizing, well, you ought to. I hate it when I hear you should. You should. Really? Should I? It makes me automatically rebellious. I don't know about you. When we start giving and advising, why don't you? You should. Again, another example. Sometimes people have the answer inside themselves already. So why don't we check in and say, what are you thinking about how to solve this first? Instead of getting into solution mode. And those of you who have all been trained as coaches, we know this really deep in our soul. Invite them into the conversation. Don't get blamey. You're wrong. Like, it's not wrong. Like, let's talk about this so we can figure out if we have a similar perspective. And be careful about interpreting and diagnosing. That's the one that triggers me. Can't stand that. So just notice how often people say, you need to, and you should, and you ought to. Okay. All right. Separate fact from interpretation. All of those who have worked with me and know that this is something I do often. Just be really intentional to say. The story I give often is I was working with this guy Clinton at the Accelerator Center. Every time we had a meeting, I noticed that he would only make this sighing sound and roll his eyes when I spoke. But when none of the other mentors spoke, it would just be for me, and it'd go like this. He'd go. So I turned to the other mentors once in a meeting. I went, like, are you guys noticing that Clinton rolls his eyes and sighs whenever I speak, but no one else? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I pulled Clinton aside. Facts are that I've noticed and others confirm that you roll your eyes and make the sighing sound when I speak. That's a fact. My interpretation is I think I might piss you off. I think there's something I'm doing or saying or being that's triggering you. Is that true? In the context of Clinton, he was like, I do? Like, he had no consciousness. And I said, yeah. I said, are you willing to kind of think on it? We come back to the conversation. He goes, like, okay. So we made an appointment for a week later. And I said, well, what'd you learn? And he goes, that I actually do this with you. And I'm like, but did you learn why? And he goes, yeah. And Clinton said, oh my God, Jackie, you're so much like my mother, but it's especially the way that you talk with your hands. And he goes, it pisses me off. Yeah, we still talk about this. This is like 7 or 8 years ago. We still talk about this because we both learned so much about each other. I would work with him in a heartbeat, to tell you the truth, because he and I chose in that context and in that moment to lean in with each other, that we built a lot of respect and found shared humor, which was even better for me. All right, so be careful. Separate fact from interpretation. And then, of course, choose your mindset and reframe it if you have to. If you hear some of those avoidant comments in your head, like how it changes over time, or it's not a good time for her, just watch your mindset. Just pay attention. Do I have a fixed view on this person or the scenario, or do I have a growth mindset here? Am I willing to embrace feedback? Am I willing to fail? Am I willing to learn from the growth here? So just really pay attention to your mindset and choose it as you go into these kinds of conversations. All right. So, and the last one for me is be genuine. And I doesn't sound like rocket science, but sometimes we're so busy pleasing others or just trying to model what we think good leadership is, whatever it is that we're choosing. I want you to find the most authentic place possible, because the the body picks up on what we call biofeedback. If you're feeling stressed or inauthentic, it'll trigger stress responses in your body. We call that masked and borrowed behavior. So when we are masking or borrowing behavior, it's not genuine. So do your best to model genuine. And avoid toxic positivity. And I brought that up because that's something I've had to learn to manage. My nature is positive, but I've had to really manage that. It can be at times, like, you think about someone who's been diagnosed with cancer, good vibes only. Like, no, right now, that's not what I need to hear, right? And we've all been through that in various stages of our life, whether you're experiencing illness or loss. So just really pay attention to be as genuine as possible. Don't offer those insincere platitudes, where you can be real. All right. So those are my quick little fire hose tips for you. How'd I do on time? 1 minute over. Thank you for playing with me and engaging in the chat. I really appreciate you.
That was so great, Jackie. Thank you. Your time was great as well, almost spot on there. It was such an engaging, important presentation, and I loved how we had so many comments, and you were just managing all of it too. So that was just impressive. I think we all need to be better equipped for courageous conversations, and we'll be sharing a little bit more information later on if you're interested in gaining more skills and confidence on that with Jackie. So now up next, I'm so pleased to introduce our next speaker. Dean Bernard is the founder and owner of Bernard and Associates. It's a workplace investigations and a mediation firm headquartered in Cambridge. Dean is passionate about workplace investigations and getting it done right. He spends many hours presenting, teaching, sharing his knowledge to help others build their skills and bring current best practices to their investigative work. So thank you so much for speaking with us today, Dean.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and it always feels good when I'm in the company of a speaker like Jackie, because I feel like, okay, I'm doing okay, because I'm like, if I'm on the same stage as Jackie, then that's a compliment to be invited to do that. So thanks so much for having me. I apologize if you're hearing this beeping noise. It seems like there's all these messages that I can't seem to shut the sound off of related to the Teams thing. I don't know. Anyway, I'll if it's bugging people, I apologize. I just can't stop it. Anyway, I've set a timer. I'm going to stay on track. I've got, as some people in this group know, I could talk and talk and talk, and it just goes on and on. But I'm going to do my best to share with you some tidbits of information that I think will help you. And but these are all, I mean, honestly, just about any given point that I talk about today can take up, significant length of time in a bigger presentation. So I'm going to do my best to share with you some things that we don't talk about as much when we think about investigations. Typically, we think about the things like, oh, how do I do an interview, or how do I write a report, or who do I know, how do I interview, or who should I interview? All these kinds of things. I'm going to take it to a different level. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll just dive right into things. And these are the three things I'm going to talk about today. First, I want to talk about the fact that details matter. Now, of course, most people would say, of course, details matter. It's an investigation. But when you look at the investigation reports and the work that many novice investigators do, they are far from many of the details that will help them. Details are incredibly important and can help you, particularly in that sort of what they often will commonly refer to as the he said, she said type of thing. So we'll talk about that. Then I want to talk about psychological safety within an investigation. Psychological safety is something that we as investigators need to be thinking about all the time, and that ties nicely into the issue of practicing trauma-informed approaches, or frankly, what I prefer to refer to as human-informed approaches. And I'll talk a little bit about why I have that attitude around that in a minute. So if we can go to the next slide, and lucky for you guys, or maybe lucky for everybody, I don't have a lot of slides. I'm going to put up a slide and I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff. So in this particular case, I'm going to start off with details matter, and what you'll see down on the other side of the slide here, you'll see how I have a bunch of things listed. And when we think about the details in an investigation, it's so critical that the details of every little aspect of the investigation are considered. The allegations are something that, we'll often see people will write a letter, or they'll fill out a complaint form. And, we'll get everything from, I am being harassed, full stop, no details, no nothing. And okay, what do we do with that? All the way to the 15-page margin to margin, or edge of page to edge of page, single spaced in an 8-font letter that provides every detail of everything that's ever happened to them since they started working with whoever it is they're complaining about. As investigators, we have to sift through all of that. We have to take the copious amount of information that is very detailed, sadly, often with many things that are completely irrelevant to what it is we actually are investigating, or we have to take the person who is providing us with very little and figure out what our allegations are. But every investigation starts with a solid allegation. understanding what that allegation is, something clear, something that contains the appropriate specifics so the person can reasonably answer to it. It's if we don't have that, we're broken from the beginning. We have to have allegations that make sense. We have to plan our investigations, and the details around the planning go beyond, just thinking around, well, who am I going to interview? We have to be thinking about other sources of evidence. We have to think about how are we going to conduct this interview? Are there people that we need to interview before others? Are there documents we want to get our hands on and review before we interview people? In other words, we need to be strategic, and our strategy needs to incorporate the details of the investigation, knowing that what that blueprint is. How will we follow this through? What are the specifics we want? And, when we get to interviewing, this is where the rubber really meets the road. But the other piece is context and background. As I said, some people will provide you with tons and tons of information, but the context and understanding why people are complaining about something. Why has this reached this stage? What has resulted in us landing here? When somebody says, well, one of the things we see a lot in investigations when nobody has witnessed the events is we see this suggestion that, well, yeah, that happened, but let me give you the real context. Or, yeah, technically that happened, but if you understand why, and, we get that a lot, right? And the only way we break that down and understand the truth of things is by getting into the details and asking those questions. When somebody says to you, I heard such and such. I've seen cases where people have just left it at that. I heard such and such. Well, who did you hear it from? When did you hear it? How did you hear it? Was it a text? Was it an email? Did they say it to you? We've got to dig in to the nitty gritty, because if people are making things up, or maybe they're just a poor historian, or maybe we have some groupthink that's going on, when we get into the details, we start breaking it down, right? It's harder for people to, it's easy for people to remember a story or tell a story that glosses the surface, that gives you the highlights. We don't want the highlights. We want to get all the way. We peel back all the layers of the onion, and that's when we get to the core of things, to the truth of things. And of course, in interviewing, that's where this is as important as anything. Our interviewing approach needs to be very solid in that we don't let people gloss over small details. We focus in on, like, I'll give you an example. Somebody says, well, I work. I touched her accidentally. Yes, I touched her, but it was an accident. Okay, well, help me understand how that accident occurs. So of course, they give you a story. How long have you worked with that person? Now, someone might say, well, what difference does it make? This is where the details matter. How long have you worked with that person? 3 years. Have you always worked in the same environment? Yes. So you've always worked in this close proximity for 3 years with this person? Yes. And in the last week, somehow you managed to touch them in a place they don't want to be touched 3 times in 1 week. How did that not happen at all in the previous 3 years? What changed, right? It's looking at things from that perspective and not just letting somebody say, well, it was an accident. All right, well, help me understand how that's an accident. And let's get into why that accident occurred, right? It's when we start delving into those details, that's where we start to have some success. And this is where obviously credibility comes in. When we're looking at credibility, we're not just looking at, a lot of people get very focused in on the incident itself, right? Like, oh, somebody is alleged to have done something, and we focus in on that incident. I want to know what happened just before it. I want to know what happened just after it. I want to know what the aftermath was. I want to know how this person behaves on a regular basis in the office. What are their usual tactics? What are the usual things they're saying? Because that's where we can start to break down issues around credibility. Somebody says, well, I'm a prince among men. And then you talk to a handful of people who say, well, actually, he sort of does this, 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 and this. And his prince among men sort of pedestal that he's put himself on slowly starts to get knocked down, because we start to see who that person is. That is where we get into credibility. Noticing things, little things, being, again, a lot of people go into an interview and they go in very prepared to ask a certain number of questions. Don't go into an interview with a certain number of questions. Sure, have your questions handy. Going into an interview and tell a person, tell me your story. Let them talk. right? Let them narrate, let them tell you what happened. Then use your questions later to get more specific if you have to, but let people tell their story. As an investigator, you're listening to that story, you're seeing the route they're taking you on, and you're adapting to it, and you're going to force them down the path of providing details to the pre-prepared story they have. They're going to share, somebody does something wrong and they know they haven't done, so they're accused of doing something wrong, but they know they didn't do it. What are they going to say? Person who didn't do it's going to say, I didn't do it. I don't know why I'm getting this complaint against me, but I did not do this. That's what most people who didn't do something will say. They're not going to spend 10 minutes disparaging the complainant. We need to take notice of these things, because when somebody says, well, she's crazy, she's this, she's that, she's probably on drugs, she's always, nobody likes her, blah, 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 blah. They shoot down that person who's the complainant, and that's a red flag. And we're looking for all these little red flags, but we don't get to the red flags if we're not paying attention for them. We're not looking for these details. And of course, when we're thinking about report preparation, again, the analysis piece, our analysis always has to be tied to the evidence. So, we need to gather all that evidence, but it's not good enough in a report to just say, having reviewed all the evidence, it is believed, or the investigator concludes on a balance of probabilities, the allegation is substantiated. Not good enough. Right? We need to get into the details. Why do I believe that? What evidence why do I believe this person's evidence over that person's evidence? And there's so many things I could talk to you about how we do that and how we break it down, but obviously we don't have the time to get into that today. So I'm going to shift to the next topic, because these are all tied together, believe it or not. Psychological safety. Most people are absolutely either afraid or angry or timid, reluctant to be involved in an investigation, whether they're the complainant, the respondent, or a witness. I mean, just like Jackie's talking about, the difficult conversations and having to address concerns, people don't like to be in this space. And everybody that we deal with as an investigator is probably not in the best of spaces in that moment. Complainants obviously upset because they believe something bad has happened that they need to complain about. Respondents not upset because they've been accused of something, and witnesses aren't happy because they don't want to be involved in most cases. So, we are dealing with people that are walking into a situation that isn't really the best environment to expect them to open up. And the only way we're going to get them to open up is by increasing their level of psychological safety in that process. And so these boxes that I have on the right are the things that we're looking at to ensure that happens. Expressing empathy to people. There's a whole process that I have for interviewing, but these are some pieces that I want to share with you about what's going to be included in that process, and making sure that we've got some empathy, that we're recognizing that this is not an easy situation to be in, that we're recognizing that maybe their job is a difficult one or a challenging one, that they're constantly under stress or whatever is appropriate in those circumstances. But demonstrating that empathy makes you human to the person you're dealing with. They see you differently when you're someone who can express some empathy for their situation. Confidentiality. I mean, this is more of a long-term reputational thing, but I have walked into cases where I've been, I'm interviewing somebody, and at the outset of the interview, they say to me, well, I'm not very comfortable because, last time I was involved in an investigation, everybody knew what I said. Well, you got to get ahead of these curves. So when we're dealing with people, again, part of creating psychological safety is helping them to understand the things you're going to do to maintain their confidentiality. Oftentimes in an interview, people will overshare, and they'll share a piece of information that's not relevant to the case. Like maybe they have some sort of a medical condition or mental health condition that really doesn't factor into the case, but they're trying to express how something has affected them, something has impacted them. And I'm going to take the moment there to say to them, listen, I really am honored that you felt comfortable sharing that with me, but I want you to know that that's not going to be appearing in any report or any document that I create as a result of this investigation, because other people are going to see this and they don't need to know that. Unless it really is directly in part of the thing that you're investigating, we need to always be using some discretion around these things. Another thing is transparency. We create psychological safety in an investigation by making sure people understand how that process is going to unfold. Where do they fit? What's their role? Why are they there? Right? How is this process going to unfold? They need to understand what it is they're getting themselves into right? So they can feel more comfortable with it. So all of these things we can do at the very beginning. I often have now, we've gotten to the point now where we're having pre-interview meetings, where we're actually meeting with people in advance of an interview to help them understand what the process is like, to deal with creating a more of a comfort level for them, all of those kinds of things. And a big part of that is helping them to understand how this process is going to unfold. Another thing is impartiality. And again, it's difficult to demonstrate this. This becomes, again, more of a reputational thing. But as many of you will be internal investigators, your reputations will precede you. For us as external investigators, that's a little different unless we work with the same organization over and over again, which we do. But having a reputation of maintaining an open mind is very important. There are many innocent people in jail because investigators didn't maintain an open mind, because they determined who they thought. They had a theory. Oh, this person likely did it. And then they focused their entire investigation on gathering evidence that will demonstrate that that person did it, often missing or ignoring evidence that proves a different theory. And as an investigator, you can never allow that to happen. As an investigator, you allow the evidence to create your theory. Don't have a theory and then gather evidence to prove your theory. When you go in that direction, you're destined for failure. When we think about non-retaliation and reprisal, what we want to do is demonstrate to people our commitment to that, right? Making sure, and most organizations are very good at that by, putting something, when they put a letter together, or, inviting somebody to an interview or whatever, they do that. But that's very important. It's very important that people understand the issue of the importance that the organization places on retaliation and reprisal, and that it is very important to the organization and to the investigator to ensure that people feel safe, that people feel that they're protected from reprisal. We don't put names of witnesses in our reports. All of our witnesses are anonymous in our reports. The only names that will be in a report will be a complainant and a respondent. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we can assure them complete and utter permanent anonymity. We have to be very honest, because honesty plays a big role in this as well. So when I say to someone, listen, I'm not putting your name in any report. You don't have to worry about that. My report is not going to even say witness 1, witness 2, witness 3. My report's going to say, I spoke to the witnesses and the majority said this, some said that. Like, I'm going to gender neutralize any witness statements that I have to put in so that it's harder for people to recognize who they are. However, that's as far as I can go to protect your anonymity. The report. Oh, I think I lost you there for a minute. Am I back? Thumbs up if I'm back. Okay, thank you.
You're back, Dean.
Okay. The report doesn't. The report isn't going to contain your name, and I'm going to do my best to hide your identity. But if this is a unionized environment and we go to arbitration, one of the first things I'm going to be asked for is my notes of my interviews, and your anonymity is gone because you may be required to testify. So I can only assure you of things to a certain level, and I need to be honest about that. And then finally, around psychological safety is just, skilled investigators. You need to have the skills to do these things. You need to have the skills to create confidence and allow people to feel safe, to allow people to feel like they can open up to you. You have to have a certain ability to create a rapport. All of these things are just important considerations. And there's, you've got to be careful in choosing investigators. If you are choosing investigators from outside or even internally, people have to have a level of confidence to do this stuff. And, skilled investigators are the ones who will get to the details, who will, manage the psychological safety. Now I'm going to go to the next slide and talk about the final piece. So I'm keeping an eye on my time here. Trauma, human-informed approaches. Now, why do I say trauma and human-informed? I'll get that out of the way right off the bat. I don't like the phrase trauma-informed when it comes to investigations. And the reason I don't like it, don't get me wrong, trauma-informed has done wonders. The words trauma-informed have helped many investigators and organizations advance the way they do things and treat people better and do better. But I worry that the words trauma-informed causes us to want to pigeonhole people into trying to figure out if they're traumatized. I'm a believer that everybody who's alive on this planet is walking around with some sort of trauma. albeit on a scale, maybe some at a 1 and some at a 10. But everybody's had trauma in their life. Everybody's had negative experiences. The impact of living life can by itself create trauma and have trauma in it. And so why would we segregate the people? I'm not going to sit down with somebody and interview them and think to myself, do they have trauma? Now, I get it. Some of the things we're investigating are in and of themselves traumatic. So of course, we're maybe a little more heightened to the possible impact of that on the person who's discussing that very issue with us. But everybody we deal with can be treated in exactly the same way and will benefit from this. So I like to think of it more as human informed, right? So part of this is now I'm going to talk about trauma, but part of this is understanding trauma. We really do need to understand what is trauma. Is trauma just a single massive horrible event? No, it can be, but it can also be a series of events. It can be a childhood experience. It can be how you were raised as a child. It can be any number of things can lead to a person having trauma in their life or having some form of PTSD. I'm no expert in human psychology or neurophysiology or any of those things, but I do know that, when it comes to how people can be exposed to trauma, it's very important that we recognize that just about everybody can have it. And one of the things that, and I apologize, there's a spelling error in the next little block where I say trauma impact on memory. But people who have been traumatized or who have significant trauma in their life often have a fragmented memory. So traditionally, investigators would interview somebody who can't remember the chronology of an event or can't remember all the facts and say, well, their credibility is low, so I'm not giving as much weight to what they say. But research has demonstrated that people who've experienced trauma actually have fragmented memories, and it's up to us to find ways to help them with their memory, to work with them, to ask questions in a non-blaming way, to use cognitive interviewing techniques, to do things to help them bring out those memories in a safe way. And again, I haven't got the time today to go into how you do that, but definitely this is something that's critically important. Another thing to help people who a lot of people who've experienced trauma or who are struggling in these situations are people who have had negative experiences in the justice system. So youth, racialized and marginalized individuals are often at greater risk of trauma, and they're often at greater risk of having difficulties working their way through one of these processes because they have just had negative experiences. And so we have to try and help them. And one of the ways we try to help them to feel comfortable with our process is by empowering them. They get to ask me questions. I let them choose when they're going to be interviewed, within reason, obviously. I try to give them control wherever I can. The more control I can give them, the more comfortable they're going to feel with the process. Also managing our bias. I mean, this is a huge topic in and of itself, but anybody who says they don't have bias is wrong. We all have biases. We have to learn how to manage our biases and recognize what they are. And of course, minimizing re-traumatization, recognizing that people who have been through a difficult event, particularly if we're investigating something that's very difficult for people, we don't want to re-traumatize them. How we ask questions is critically important. You don't ask a question that generates a sense of pointing the finger of judgment. Why didn't you call out for help? That's a judgy, blaming question that will make a person feel like garbage. We don't want to ask questions like that. Instead, you'd say, is it possible anybody could have heard what happened? Right? You'll get where you need to get to if you ask your questions in a more subtle way and avoid blaming. And again, another topic we could get into in great detail. And then I've already talked a little bit about this universal approach. I apply these processes to everybody I deal with. Everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Next slide, as I'm about to run out of time. So the answers you're looking for are in the details, but getting to the details is a process. And that's why I've tried to kind of bring all of this together. We need the details, but you won't get them if you don't work with people. And working with people by showing them dignity and respect, by empowering them, by instilling a sense of safety, generating trust, it will lead to the details. It's a cascade. And these are the things that we need to be looking at. Now, obviously, I don't have a lot of time to talk here, so I've rushed through this, and I apologize. I hope I've shared with you some tidbits. I do want to go to my last slide, which is going to shock some of you. It's a little different, but I was told to throw this at the end because I am involved in a fundraising event that is raising money for the Pinball Clemens Foundation, which is a foundation that helps marginalized and racialized youth with issues around education, helping mentor them, helping them in the job world. And so I am looking for donations for this. I'm going to be jumping into the boxing ring and fighting on June 6th. And hopefully winning. But I've been training very hard and getting ready for this boxing event, and I am looking for people to donate. So I have a proposition for people that I'm going to throw out there in my last 48 seconds. I am obviously I do a lot of educational work, and I can take all of these concepts that we've talked about and turn them into an amazing, half day or full day long experience that will really help people. Normally I charge obviously I charge a fairly significant fee for that work. I'm willing to cut that fee in half if that money is donated to this cause. And so I will provide those services at half the normal price, and I'll donate my time if the money goes to this cause. So I've got a website down here you can look at. If you just want to make a donation, I'd be grateful. If you want to talk about what we can do, what we can put together, a program I can create for you or customize for you, then my email address is here. Oh, there's my timer that I've run out of time, so I'm going to stop. But thank you all very much for listening, and I'll shut up now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dean. First of all, your topic was so important. I think that information was likely new information for a lot of people on the call today, or at least new parts of the information that you shared. So that's so important. And you guys will see in the chat that Jill made mention of a training that we're filming with Dean. And then the part about Dean Bulldog Bernard working with the Pinball Clemens organization and the Victory Gala. If you guys go to the website to see that stuff, Dean also has some videos of him training. And this is a brave, strong man with a very big heart who's going to jump into a boxing ring and hopefully win, like he said. But it's all for such a great cause. So we really hope that you're going to be able to meet your donation goals and support such a worthy project, Dean. Thank you so much for this today.
Well, thank you.
All right, so in our last few minutes here, we're going to have our H2R's very own Sara Dhalla is going to come on for just a quick update with us on a few of our impactful learning and training opportunities.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. I do see some familiar faces and names in the chat, which is great to see. I'll be very quick. I just wanted to share a bit about H2R's Learning Academy, a resource we've designed to support and enhance the growth of our clients' teams. Our goal here is simple. We aim to provide innovative training solutions that empower businesses. Whether you're looking to enhance your team's current skills or expand their knowledge base, our academy is designed to meet those needs. We've tailored our platform to ensure that it's very user-friendly for employees. Sign up is super easy, allowing your team to begin learning without any delays. As soon as a course is completed, a certificate of achievement is immediately issued. The process not only motivates learners, but also allows you to track your team's progress. Our academy also offers a diverse range of courses. This includes essential compliance modules designed to keep your organization aligned with employment standards and regulations. Additionally, we have a variety of other professional development topics as well. We also actively collaborate with industry leaders such as CAPSA and Learning Snippets to enhance our content and ensure that our content is current and filled with relevant topics. Thanks, Salini. In addition to our comprehensive e-learning courses, we also offer a range of programs and assessments to further support your team's development. These include specialized workshops on crucial conversations, performance management, and managerial skills, among others. Our assessments also provide insights into leadership styles and team dynamics. These additional offerings ensure you have a set of professional development tools to meet the various needs of your team. Now we'll hand it over to Jill, who will give you some exciting details about Jackie's upcoming workshop.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Today is actually National High Five Day. Did we know that? So let's all give each other a high five, and a high five to Jackie and Dean for wonderful, wonderful presentation this afternoon. Thank you. So a couple of things that we do for leadership and customized training, and this is our very own Jackie Lauer who offers these different offerings. One is Manager Bootcamp Foundations. Today you saw just a snippet and a teaser of difficult conversations, but Jackie actually runs courageous conversations, and I'm going to show you dates that are coming up in May for that. Lots of different Leader as Coach program, which is a fairly new program that we're offering now. There's just so much out there, and I would really encourage all of you to connect in with us to explore those opportunities. So next slide, Eleni. So the Courageous Conversations Workshop, if you liked what you heard from Jackie and you want more, she's offering this virtually, and this is starting, I don't have my glasses on, I think it's May 8th or May 9th, and it's snippets of time for 4 or 5 weeks, and that's starting soon in May. So make sure you email us if you want some more information or you want to register for that, and it's all online. So if you liked what you heard, please send us a note. And then the next one is that we're running right now is taking registrations for is Leader as Coach program. So for those of you who are leaders, and again, liked what Jackie was talking about, I can't say enough about the organizations that I'm going to say Jackie has helped to transform. I mean, I know transform is a huge word, but Jackie has done amazing work with so many different organizations locally, across Canada. I just can't say enough, and I can't get enough from Jackie. So there's a plug for her. And then the next thing is this is coming up actually on Monday. So for those of you who are in KW, Cambridge, Guelph area, Inspire and Connect. It's a full day leadership. It's from 8:30 in the morning till about 3. And the featured keynote speaker, for those of you who might be hockey fans and perhaps Habs fans, like my dad is, Stanley Cup winner Ryan Walter is actually the keynote speaker for this. And this is happening at Tapestry Hall on Monday. There are still tickets available. If you're interested, again, you can email admin@yourh2r.com for more information on it. It's going to be a fantastic day. And actually, Jackie and I are both sitting on the panel that will be happening in the afternoon. So we hope to see you there. So thank you for joining. We are right at time, but I want to open it up. If anybody has any questions for H2R or for Jackie or Dean, please feel free to take yourself off mute and jump in and ask a question. I'm seeing some hearts and some claps. I love that. And Dean's website there, that's perfect. Dean, we should have included your pictures with you with the boxing gloves on. I love those pictures. So just so everybody knows, just this past Monday, Dean was wonderful and provided a workshop on investigations. It was a full day workshop on Monday, 24 people. And Dean donated his time in exchange for us providing a charitable donation, which was just absolutely amazing. So Dean, I hope you get to your goal. I know you're really, really close. So there's a plug for you. I hope people will support you because it's a great cause. Absolutely. And I've met Pinball. He's actually shorter than I am, and I'm only I'm the short one. I'm only 5'3", and I've seen his fancy ring that he's got too from playing football.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He really is. And and hey, even if you don't donate, guys like me people love to see them get punched in the face. So you could donate just for that reason alone. Just if you want to see me get punched in the face. If you donate $100, you get a live stream link. So like, of course, Jill, your whole team will get a live stream link. But yeah, if you donate, you get a live stream link to see the fights. And yeah, I mean, any help would be appreciated.
Excellent. And we hope to do these lunch and learns again. So we will likely try and set something up for May. So thank you everybody for joining. And thank you for the thumbs up. And we hope to see you again. just checking the chat if there's anything in there. I'm seeing waves and hearts and everything. Have a great rest of the
Jackie
week.
kills me. You're
Thank you,
hilarious,
Nick.
Jackie.
What's Jackie? What's Jackie? What are you doing, Jackie, over there? Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone.